But this card reminds me of like a Rhystic Study or a Smothering Tithe, in that most of the time people are not going to pay that extra mana. Same thing with like Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, all those tax effects kind of cards. And then this thing is just 1 mana. It's 1 mana to target a creature so it cannot attack you. Pretty underrated card in my opinion. And this is every time it attacks too. It is not just if it attacks you, if it attacks another player, they are always going to have to pay that 3 as long as this enchantment stays on that creature. All right, so the next card we're going to talk about here is Ashes to Ashes. It is a 1 mana 2 black sorcery. It says Ashes to Ashes removes 2 target non-artifact creatures from the game and does 5 damage to you. Now, I know that it's 3 mana and a sorcery, and it does 5 damage. You're looking at a bunch of downsides here, but there is so many decks that this could go in where it would be good. And not only that, it exiles 2 creatures for 3 mana. That is so huge, especially in black. I like this card a lot. Yeah, 5 damage seems like it's a lot, but if you're running a deck like Greven, Predator Captain, or just some deck where you want to lose life, or you are in a life gain deck like an Orzhov, like Cleric's tribal deck like I have, where I run this card, 5 life is nothing. This is an automatic exile the 2 scariest things on the board, and you're going to lose 5 life, but if you're playing a life gain deck, that's nothing. It's not really going to hurt you in the long run. Obviously, yeah, it's kind of niche because of that, but that's why I feel like this card's underrated. And I know people kind of like look down on sorcery speed stuff, but when the effect is so good that it exiles 2 creatures and it's only 3 mana, you kind of have to take that into account as being a little better. I like this card a lot. It it's only about 59 cents. It's been reprinted quite a few times. You can get it in like 4th edition, 5th edition, all that kind of stuff. So it's not terribly expensive, but I think this card's pretty underrated, and yeah, definitely use it. All right, so next up, we're looking at Gias Touch. It is 2 green enchantment. It says you may put 1 additional land in play during each of your turns, but that land must be a basic forest. You may sacrifice Gias Touch to add 2 green to your mana pool. This ability is played as an interrupt. Now, for landfall decks, this thing is insane. I added it to a Necrobloom list that I had. You think like playing only forest, like, oh, that's going to be such a huge drawback. But when a deck is like predominantly green and its mana cost, or not only that, also I put this in my Reki History of Kamigawa deck. It is such a good thing in a monocolor green deck where you're only going to be playing forest, so you get 2 land drops a turn. Yeah, it's basic forest, so what? But if you're, running like that monocolor thing, it's totally valuable in that. Not only that, if it's even in a 2-color deck, it's still just as valuable. It gets a little less as you go like 3, 4, 5 colors, obviously. But even then, the ability to sacrifice it for 2 mana is also really good in Enchantress decks. So that is another good place to play this card is in Enchantress stuff. Stuff like Goshintai, Tom Bombadil, the new Marina Vendrell, but she's really kind of an Enchantress commander. Anakthea. There's so many good Enchantress decks you could run this in because it's an enchantment. It gives you 2 green mana, so you pay 2 green, you could sack it, get 2 back. You could probably recur this from your graveyard. This card's wicked underrated, man. I really love this card. It is currently about $1.50, depending on where you find it. So it's not terribly expensive, but it is only ever been printed in the dark, and that is the only printing. It's not on the reserve list or anything like that. And next up, we have Dark Heart of the Wood. It is a green and a black enchantment. It says you may sacrifice the forest to gain 3 life. This counts as both a black card and a green card. This card is awesome in Baba Lysaga. This card is awesome in Korvold. This card is awesome in Necrobloom. This card is awesome in so many decks where you want to sacrifice lands, or you have a landfall type deck where you're going to be playing a bunch of lands, or you're going to be sacrificing stuff in Golgari. Pretty underrated card and life gain. That's why I'd say Babala Saga, because the way I built that deck is more of like a life gain deck and also a sacrifice deck, and it cares about certain types. So this kind of like plays both sides of that. Again, Necrobloom sacrificing lands is huge in that deck. 2 mana for an enchantment that lets you have a sack outlet for lands and you can gain life. Pretty cool card. Definitely underrated. It's only 33 cents. It's only been reprinted one other time in Ravnica City of Guilds, and that one is 13 cents. Definitely check out and try this card if you have any of those kind of decks. And I'm pretty sure this card is a little more well known than the other cards, so maybe it's not entirely underrated. But the next card is Dark Sphere. It's a 0 cost artifact. This is tap, sacrifice Dark Sphere to prevent half of the damage done to you by a single source rounded down. So if somebody has a big burn spell, they're going to point at you, or they have a giant creature that's like a 20/20, they're going to point at you. Something like that that's going to cause a lot of damage. You can tap and sack this, and it will half all that damage. Now the card is almost $5, so that says to me people probably know about this card a little more than I expected. But even then, $5 isn't that bad. That's pretty average of what I would spend on a card personally. So don't let that price get you down. The card is pretty cool because of that, because it costs 0, and stopping damage like that is pretty damn important. So I definitely think this is an underrated card. More people should absolutely run it. It's not on the reserve list, but it has only ever been printed in the dark. And I think it's just because it's 0 mana. That's probably why it costs so much in hindsight. Those cards are usually higher value. And finally, a bonus card here. We have a land card called Safe Haven. It's kind of like a shittier Maze of Ith. You pay to tap it to remove target creature you control from the game. This ability is played as an interrupt, and then during your upkeep, sacrifice Safe Haven to return all creatures that is removed from the game directly into play. Treat this as they were just summoned. So for Blink decks, this is pretty damn cool. Now, obviously, land destruction is not a huge thing in EDH. Yes, it is out there and it does happen. But just imagine you're playing a Blink deck and you're going to remove all these like value creatures from the game, and then you can sack this land to get them all back onto the battlefield. That's fucking huge. And for just 2 mana, this card's pretty damn underrated. I do not have one, but I want to get it for a deck tech that I have coming up. The Niko deck, the new one from Duskmourn. That's my next deck tech, by the way, if you guys are listening. So I haven't got this card yet, but I really want to try it in that deck because I feel like it would be such a huge impact on that deck and how it works, and like getting the value off like blink creatures and ETB kind of effects. It has been reprinted a few times. The original, the dark printing, is $5, but it was also printed in the time spiral time shifted, and it's about 80 cents from that set. So that's the bonus card of the set. And those are all of the cards from the dark that I think are pretty underrated. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please check out my deck techs, and if you like videos like this, please let me know, because I'm going to keep doing them anyway. They're kind of fun and they're quick for me to do. So I will keep trying to find these weird old cards that may not have a place in modern Magic, modern EDH, but are pretty underrated. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much. I'm Wildcard MTG.